Ting lahat. Welcome to another Circa Agriculture and Development Seminar Series or ADSS. The ADSS encourages the presentation and discussions of development, their implications for agricultural and rural development, and natural resources management. For more than 20 years now, vibrant change of scientific and practical knowledge in agriculture and development within and even you to engage in the open forum after our speakers' presentations. So my name is Toix and I'll be your MC for this afternoon's ADSS. This is ADSS on resilient and profitable crops under climate change, what works for smallholder farmers. This seminar will present practical interventions and policy approaches that enable smallholder farmers to adapt to climate change while maintaining the productivity, profitability, and long-term sustainability of high-value crops. It will also highlight research aimed at developing high-yielding purple yam or ube varieties through advanced breeding and genomic studies. We are also live-streamed via Circa's Facebook page. So sa mga, to those who are joining us through Circa's Facebook page, you may click like or just post any reactions in our Circa's Facebook page. A few house rules before we start. Please put your phone on silent mode and reserve your questions for the open forum. For any social media sharing, please use the hashtag CircaADSS. All right, let's now dive into our presentation. And we are delighted to have with us two esteemed experts for this afternoon's seminar. Just a reminder, we will accommodate questions after the two presentations. Let me introduce to you our first speaker. Mr. Joseph C. Manicad currently serves as the Director of the High Value Crops Development Program of the Development of Agriculture. With more than 20 years of dedicated service in agricultural statistics, planning, and investment programming, he has built an impressive career advancing evidence-based decision-making and sustainable agricultural development in the Philippines. Throughout his career, he has held key leadership positions in the Bureau of Agricultural Statistics and the Department of Agriculture, where he has played a significant role in shaping programs and investments that benefit the country's agriculture sector. A licensed environmental planner and a proud Circa scholar, Director Manicad earned his Master in Public Management from the Ateneo School of Government. Today, he leads national initiatives that strengthen the production, processing, and marketing of high-value crops with the goal of improving farmers' livelihoods and enhancing the competitiveness of Philippine agriculture. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Director Joseph C. Manicad.
To our colleagues from the Southeast Asian Regional Center for Graduate Study in Agriculture, representatives from the government and non-government agencies, to the students, members of the academe, our development partners, researchers, extension professionals, ladies and gentlemen, isang magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Isa pong karangalan to share with you the Department of Agriculture's experiences in strengthening climate resilience among smallholder farmers through the High Value Crops Development Program. The High Value Crops Development Program is one of the banner programs of the Department of Agriculture. So we cater fruits, vegetables, root crops, even ornamentals and industrial crops. So climate change has fundamentally changed the way we think about agriculture. Our objective is no longer simply to increase production. We must ensure that agricultural systems remain productive, profitable, and resilient despite increasing climate risk. Today, I will discuss practical interventions that demonstrated positive results on the ground, lessons learned from the implementation, and the partnerships needed to scale these solutions across the country. Next slide. Agriculture is among the sectors most affected by climate change. Farmers now experience stronger typhoons, prolonged droughts, floods, El Nino. For this season, we have prolonged El Nino. That's why the Department of Agriculture is gearing towards mitigation of the effects of El Nino. Pest outbreaks, increasing production uncertainty. These hazards directly reduce yields, increase production cost, as well as threaten rural livelihoods. The high-value crops are particularly sensitive because these often require precise water management, increase production cost, and threaten rural livelihoods. Careful production handling. At the same time, demand for nutritious, high-value food continues to increase. Climate change, therefore, affects not only production. It also affects incomes. It affects food security, and ultimately, it affects rural development. Therefore, climate resilience is no longer optional. It has become central to agricultural competitiveness, food security, and sustainable rural development. The challenge, therefore, is how to help farmers continue producing despite increasingly unpredictable climate conditions. So why high-value crops matter? Next slide. High-value crops contribute far beyond farm production. They strengthen food and nutrition security by providing diverse and nutritious food for Filipino households. Economically, they generate higher incomes per hectare, create employment opportunities throughout the value chain, and stimulate rural enterprise development. They also support export competitiveness and contribute significantly to agricultural growth. Investing in high-value crops therefore means investing simultaneously in food security, economic development, and climate resilience. Under the High-Value Crops Development Program, we support a diverse range of commodities. This includes legumes, lowland and highland vegetables, root crops, industrial crops, fruits, as well as ornamental and spices. Together, these commodities illustrate the diversity of opportunities available to Filipino farmers and remain one of the strongest drivers of agricultural growth. However, we are to realize the full potential of these commodities. We must first understand the realities faced by the people who produce them. Let us now look at the major challenges confronting the smallholder farmers. Next slide. What are the challenges facing the smallholder farmers? So number one is the production challenges. So these include climate variability, water scarcity, and increasing pest and disease pressures. Economic challenges involve rising input costs, volatile market prices, and limited access to affordable financing. Institutional challenges include gaps in extension services, technology adoption, infrastructure, and market access. These constraints rarely occur in isolation. Rather, they reinforce one another and reduce farmers' capacity to invest, innovate, and adapt. Addressing these challenges, therefore, requires integrated interventions rather than isolated solutions. Next. This is the HVCDP framework. So this is precisely the approach adopted by the High Value Crops Development Program. Rather than implementing disconnected activities, we focus on three strategic pillars. First is the productive agriculture. This improves farm productivity through quality planting materials, protected cultivation, as well as mechanization. Second is resilient agriculture, which focuses on climate-smart agriculture, crop diversification, and sustainable resource management to reduce production risk. The third is profitable agriculture, which strengthens value chains, improves post-harvest systems, and connects farmers to better markets. Productivity without resilience is unsustainable, while resilience without profitability cannot be maintained. So how do we operationalize these pillars on the ground? Next. So traditionally, agriculture systems have followed a linear model. We extract resources, produce food, generate waste, and dispose it. However, under increasing climate pressures and resource constraints, this approach is becoming less sustainable. So circular agriculture offers a different perspective. Instead of viewing agricultural byproducts as waste, it recognizes them as resources that can be returned to the production cycle. In other words, it encourages us to maximize the value of every resource while minimizing the waste and environmental impact. This shift is particularly relevant for the Philippines, where many farming communities already practice forms of resource recycling. But where there remains significant potential to scale these practices through science, innovation, and policy support. Next slide. If circular agriculture is about maximizing the efficient use of resources, the next principle is about managing risk. Diversification is often understood simply as growing different crops. However, from a development perspective, it is much broader than that. It is a strategy that reduces vulnerability by creating multiple sources of production, income, and value within the same farming system. When farmers depend on a single commodity, they are exposed to greater risk. A single pest outbreak can prolong a prolonged drought, or a sudden decline in market prices can significantly affect their livelihood. Diversification spreads those risks across multiple enterprises, making farming systems more adaptable to changing conditions. At the farm level, diversification encourages the integration of vegetable, fruits, legumes such as mung bean, soya, root crops such as ube, sweet potato, and perennial crops based on local agroecological conditions. Each commodity contributes differently. Some provide short-term income. Others generate long-term returns. Legumes improve soil fertility through biological nitrogen fixation. Perennial crops contribute to ecosystem stability while creating additional income opportunities. The objective is not simply to increase the number of crops, but to develop farming systems that are productive, resilient, and economically balanced. Several flagship initiatives of the Department of Agriculture reflect these principles. Programs such as Gulayan sa Bayan, Project Safe or Sustainable Agroforestry Farming Enterprise, and the promotion of grafting technology demonstrate different applications of diversification, from improving household food security to integrating agroforestry systems and enhancing crop resilience. Next. Gulayan sa Bayan is one of the flagship initiative of the Department of Agriculture under the High Value Crops Development Program. This operationalizes a community-based, nutrition-sensitive farm production model in 1,370 vegetable nurseries and gardens in the country. Implemented through the DA regional offices, the GSB empowers rural improvement clubs or the women's group, 4-H youth clubs, and other community organized associations to enhance food access, foster sustainable food system, and provide additional income in the local communities. At the heart of the Gulayan sa Bayan program is the production of quality vegetable seedlings. A key innovation is vegetable grafting, which combines disease-resistant rootstock with high-performing varieties to produce seedlings that are more resilient to pests, diseases, drought, and flooding, while delivering higher and more stable yields. For 2026 to 2027, the GSB targets approximately 1,370 community-based sites to expand access to quality seedling and climate-smart vegetable production. The program follows a simple pathway: establish community-based nurseries, produce quality seedlings, distribute them to communities, and promote household and community gardens, and strengthen food security and livelihood. This is achieved through strong partnerships with the LGUs, rural improvement clubs, the farmers' organizations, schools, women's group, JICA, through the MV2C project or the enhancement of value chain in the vegetable. This supports capacity building, grafting technology, nursery management, and market linkage. Together, these partners create an integrated value chain, from quality seeds to productive harvest, building more resilient farming communities across the country. Next. The next project is the Project SAFE, or the Sustainable Agroforestry Farm Enterprise. So this project demonstrates how agriculture can deliver multiple benefits in an integrated, multi-story agroforestry system by combining trees, bamboo, fruit crops, vegetables, and legumes within the same landscape. The project improves land productivity while restoring ecosystems, conserving soil and water, and strengthening climate resilience. Beyond food production, Project SAFE advances 4 key objectives: food security, climate resilience, the circular bioeconomy, and rural enterprise development. These outcomes create healthier ecosystems, diversified livelihood, and more resilient farming communities, demonstrating that environmental conservation and agricultural productivity can be achieved through sustainable agroforestry. Next. A key strength of the project is its tripartite partnership among the Department of Agriculture, the National Power Corporation, and the Agricultural Productivity and Trade Initiative. By combining technical expertise, access to watershed areas, and market linkages, the project creates a complete value chain from quality seedlings and integrated agroforestry farms to productive harvest, stronger communities, and sustainable rural livelihood, while contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals. Next. Both SAFE and Gulayan sa Bayan have been certified by the Department of Economy, Planning, and Development as priority programs under the 2026 National Priority Plan. So this recognition affirms their alignment to the Philippine Development Plan, particularly in advancing food security and modernizing agriculture. More importantly, the certification allows eligible private sector donations to donate in these programs and qualify for tax incentives, 100% tax deductibility. So this encourages greater public-private partnership. It reflects national recognition that investing in climate-resilient agriculture, sustainable livelihoods, and ecosystem restoration is a strategic priority for the country's long-term development. Next. So these are the post-harvest innovations in the high-value crops. So improving production alone is not enough if significant losses occur after harvest. So one of the greatest opportunities to improve agricultural productivity is not necessarily for producing more, but by losing less. As shown in this slide, this includes SECSI, or the Zero Energy Cooling Chamber. So this is a project by the Bureau of Agricultural Research. I think that was still in the time of our former BAR director, Director Soriano. Yeah. So this provides affordable cooling solutions for smallholder farmers, particularly in areas without reliable electricity. Yung may pinaglagyan ng kamatis. So this is a storage using zero electricity. Solar drying technologies which improve product quality while reducing dependence on conventional fuel resources. Packaging houses and grading facilities which helps maintain product quality, improve handling practices, and meet market standards. And cold chain facilities, which are essential for maintaining freshness during storage, transport, and distribution. Each of these interventions addresses a different stage of the post-harvest value chain, but they all share a common objective, which is to preserve quality, minimize losses, and increase the market value of the agricultural products. Next. Beyond increasing farm productivity, the Department of Agriculture also promotes value addition to help farmers capture greater value from their harvest. Instead of selling raw produce alone, crops can be processed into higher value products such as mung bean noodles. Example natin. Exhibit. Si Miss Cham, our engineer sa office, can show the exhibit. This is the mung bean noodle. This is being produced by our cooperative in Region 2. So lalagyan lang po natin ng mainit na tubig and noodles, instant noodle. Healthy po siya. O pwede po in partnership with Department of Education, DSWD. Ito po yung tina-target po natin na market, and this is being rolled out in the entire country. Yeah. We also have the malunggay breadstick. So instead of chichirya, pakain natin sa ating mga estudyante, malunggay breadstick. Yung mahilig sa pansit, squash noodles. And this is also a product of our beneficiary. Squash noodles. Pansit canton, squash noodles. Okay, sir, to ube. May ube powder. Very in demand ngayon and famous ang ube o purple yam. Maha blanca ube. Sarap to. Sa mga tinatamad magluto, ginisang munggo, lalagyan lang po natin ng mainit na tubig and ginisang munggo na siya. So these innovations extend shelf life, reduce post-harvest losses, diversify income sources, and create new market for farming communities. By strengthening processing and agribusiness, we enable farmers to participate in higher value markets while building more resilient and profitable agricultural value chains. Yung jackfruit wala. So, sadly po, medyo expired na po yung ating pangan. Expired na. Dapat mag-o-order pa po tayo. For demonstration purposes lang po. We also have climate-smart agri-interventions. So, as shown in this slide, CSA combines different technologies and management practices. So, we have the protected cultivation, which helps reduce crop losses from extreme weather. So, one of the banner projects of the Department of Agriculture is the White Revolution. So, this White Revolution, the vision of the Secretary, ay makita niya ang paligid na puti through greenhouses. Green pero white ang gusto niyang makita. So, this protected cultivation will going to protect the crops under changing or variable weather condition. Efficient irrigation system improve water use efficiency, particularly during periods of drought. Mulching conserves soil moisture while improving soil health. Integrated pest management promotes environmentally sound approaches to pest control, as well as integrated crop management, which integrates climate resiliency and regenerative agriculture. Rainwater harvesting, which helps farmers to prepare for increasingly unpredictable rainfall patterns. Each intervention addresses specific challenge, but their greatest impact is realized when they are implemented together. We also have the use of cropping calendar as reference in the production and harvesting. So we consider climate variability as well as soil condition. Next. Beyond individual climate smart technologies, the Department of Agriculture has adopted a coordinated national response through the El Nino Action Plan. So this period we have prolonged El Nino. So this whole of the department approach brings together multiple DA agencies to ensure the interventions are targeted, timely, and responsive to local conditions. The plan includes the distribution of drought-resilient planting materials, improved water management, expansion of climate-smart technologies for high-value crops, access to credit and crop insurance, and strengthen extension and climate advisory services. Importantly, interventions are being localized by provinces and aligned with the cropping calendar to maximize their effectiveness. By integrating production support, risk management, financing, and climate information, the department aims not only to reduce the impacts of El Nino on agricultural production, but also to strengthen the long-term resilience of farming communities across the country. Next. To strengthen preparedness, the DA is also adopting a data-driven, location-specific approach to planning interventions for the upcoming El Nino. This system integrates 3 key data sets at the provincial level. First is the forecasted rainfall information from DOST Pagasa, which provides expected rainfall patterns and potential water shortages. Second is crop water requirement. This data is coming from the Bureau of Soils and Water Management, which estimates the amount of water that each crop needs throughout the growth cycle. Third is projected crop production data based on PSA historical data, including the expected area planted and cropping schedules for each provinces. Through the use of this map, we can use this as reference in planning the interventions that we are going to position at the provincial or local level. So dito sa mapa na to, pinagbabanggaan natin ang requirement for water ng iba't ibang crops as well as the magiging availability. From there on, we can estimate the production as well as ibabanggaan natin to with the sufficiency level and position the interventions across the country. The animation shown illustrates how these datasets are integrated to produce a dynamic province-level assessment for different crops and months. Rather than implementing a one-size-fits-all strategy, this approach enables the department to deliver timely, evidence-based, and location-specific intervention, ensuring that resources are directed to the areas where they are needed, and helping farmers become more resilient to the impact of El Niño. Next. Climate resilience is ultimately about people. It is about ensuring that farmers remain productive, profitable, and competitive despite the growing challenges posed by climate change. The experiences of HVCDP demonstrate that resilience is achieved through integrated investments in climate-smart production systems, post-harvest innovations, diversified livelihood, sustainable agroforestry, and strong public-private community partnership. By continuing to invest in innovation, collaboration, and evidence-based policymaking, we can build agricultural systems that can not only withstand future shocks, but also create greater opportunities for rural communities. On behalf of DA, I thank CIRCA for providing this valuable platform for dialogue and knowledge sharing. We look forward to continued collaboration in advancing climate resilient and profitable agriculture for the benefit of our smallholder farmers. Thank you very much po, and maraming salamat po for having us here.
Thank you very much, Director Manicad, for that insightful presentation. Indeed, we have seen the Department of Agriculture's High Value Crops Development Program, how they translate climate resilience into practical action through climate-smart technologies, integrated partnerships, farmer-centered innovations that help build a more productive, profitable, and sustainable agricultural sector. Once again, thank you, Director Manicad. Our next speaker is a distinguished scientist and educator whose career has been dedicated to advancing Philippine agriculture through research, innovation, and education. Dr. Antonio G. Lalusin is Professor 12 at the Institute of Crop Science, or ICROPS, at the College of Agriculture and Food Science, University of the Philippines, Los Baños. He earned his PhD and MS in Bioresource Engineering, specializing in molecular biology and biotechnology from the University of Tsukuba in Japan, and also completed graduate studies in plant breeding at UPLB. With more than 3 decades of experience in plant breeding, molecular biology, and crop science, he has led pioneering work in improving economically important crops such as abaca, sugarcane, cassava, sweet potato, banana, coconut, and many others. Currently serving as division head of the Crop Breeding and Genetic Resources Division of ICROPS, Dr. Lalusin has led numerous nationally funded research projects developed more than 30 improved crop varieties, and authored over 60 scientific publications. His outstanding contributions to agricultural research, teaching, and extension has earned him prestigious recognitions, including the Outstanding Young Scientist Award from the National Academy of Science and Technology, and multiple UP scientist appointments. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Antonio G. Laducin. Sir.
Okay lang ma. Okay, good afternoon po sa ating lahat. This project is funded also by High Value Crops of DA, and we started the project last 2000. So 2000 is pandemic, so that's the problem. No? So, bakit wala? So the title of my presentation is Harnessing Genetic Diversity and Genomics to Accelerate the Development of Superior Philippine Ube Varieties. Okay. Pag narinig nyo yung ube, ano bang ibig sabihin? Anong yung unang naisip nyo? What do you mean? If you hear the word ube? Purple, the color. Okay, so it's the color. So this year there is a hype of ube. So napaka-popular niya. Nagtanim ba kayo ng ube? O bumili ba kayo ng ube? Hindi pa. So siguro after the presentation, you're going to plant ube already. Ayaw? Or may technical problem. Pero naku naman.
Okay, so we're experiencing some technical difficulty. Taking from what Dr. Lalucin has said about ube, can you share with us your memorable experience with ube? If there's, for me, it's halo-halo. In the Philippines, for those joining us online, we have this sweet, a cold sweet called halo-halo, where you put different ingredients that are sweet and topped with shaved ice with milk, and then there's an ube topped on the halo-halo. So that's one of the memorable experience. Sir?
Okay, so this is the title of my presentation, Harnessing Genetic Diversity and Genomics to Accelerate the Development of Superior Philippine Ube Varieties. So this is a collaboration between the Institute of Crop Science and the Philippine Genome Center. Okay, ube or ube, so if you are from Bisaya, the ube, which is they will pronounce it as ube. Okay, and so it's not moving. Sige, sige. Pero. Okay po. So, next please. So, ube or purple yam is locally known as ube or greater yam because there are minor yams. Ano? So, it means greater yam, so mas mataas yung level niya kumpara doon sa minor yams. So, for example, in the case of minor yams, so these are Dioscorea esculenta, Hespida, and Bulbipira. But this is Dioscorea alata. Okay, so aside from being a sweetened product, so as he said that it is used in halo-halo, so there are lots of preparation, and this can be exploited also as alternative staple because so I have told you that if you hear about the word ube, the first thing that it came to your mind is the color, but not ube are ube, or not purple yam are purple. Okay, so there are different colors. So I will show you after. So ubi root or ubi tuber is 70% water and 30% starch or dry matter. So it contains traces of fat, crude protein, sugar, crude fiber, ash, vitamin C, vitamin B1, and B2. Next, please. So this is the nutrient composition of 100 grams of ube. So water is quite high, followed by the energy, which is 65 kilocalorie, and it is high in phosphorus. Next, please. So ube is grown primarily for its roots or tubers, and tubers can be eaten as boiled, baked, roasted, flakes, chips, and processed into ice cream, or actually, according to DA, this will be the next matcha. Okay, so hydrated yam slices are used for the preparation of food, such as ice cream, cakes, pastries, and other desserts. So ube skin or peeling can be used as a raw material for the manufacture of food coloring. So yung peel niya, yung balat. So this can be a source of food coloring because it is high in anthocyanin. Okay, however, ube has a low yield, seasonal nature, dormancy, and lack of planting materials. This is the reason why there is a decline in the production of ube. So our annual production demand is 49,000 metric tons in 2011, but our production in 2022, next please. In 2021 is 15,000 metric tons only. So imagine the gap. And in 2022, there is still a decline. It became 13,535 metric tons only. So there is a shortage of supply. So, and what is happening now is there is a big demand in export in other countries. So ube exports remain strong, reaching 3.06 million US dollar in 2025. So imagine the market for ube. And we are exporting ube products like powder, puree, or even halaya. Actually, the Filipinos abroad are the one popularizing our very own ube. Okay, then about 48% of the production is consumed by households. The rest is sold through markets and processors. And according in Bohol, ube farming remains profitable. So according to them, 58.5% profit margin was reported. So imagine still profitable. But I was in Bohol last Saturday and Sunday, and we are looking for the areas planted for kinampay, and not the areas planted by ube is not that big. It is planted in patches, in small patches. Okay, next please. Okay, so in our project, so what we want is to develop a variety of ube by means of conventional breeding. So what we did is use the collection. So we did collection, morphological characterization, and even molecular, and do diversity analysis. And we were able to collect 188 greater yam accessions. And from that, 71 came from the NPGRL. 61 are from Visayas State University in the Philippine root crops, and 56 were collected from different parts of the Philippines. And these were planted and evaluated in the field. Okay, next please. So this is the color of ube collections. Ano? So not all ube are purple. Okay, so look at the picture. So the range of color is from white, cream, yellow, sometimes pink, sometimes orange, and only few are purple. So from the collection of NPGRL and root crops, so we were not able to select the purple one. So what we did is we selected from the collections all over the Philippines. Next, please. So this is the genetic diversity using morphological markers. So it means that the germplasm is really diverse. So OB accessions were characterized using the 22 morphological characters, and so it means that the OB accessions are really diverse, or they are variable. Next, please. And this is the result of the SSR marker analysis. So polymorphic bands were amplified in 50 out of 89 SSR markers with an average PIC value of 0.83. And 9 distinct clusters were generated with 85% dissimilarity. So still, using the SSR markers, our accessions or our collections are really diverse. Next, please. So we did also genetic array analysis. So we sent the DNA from in Australia, a total of 166,513 silico dart markers and 54,582 SNP markers were produced by the medium density dart profiling of greater YAM accessions. So, and we were able to filter the SNP markers and also the silico dart markers. Next, please. Okay, so from that result of the diversity analysis, we were able to select 30 accessions that are purple, and the yield is, so what we did is do field performance evaluation of these 30 purple YAM accessions. So these are planted in Erie Central Experiment Station, but it is the area also of iCraps. So these are the greater YAM accessions in the field. Next, please. So then after that, we did harvesting. So as you can see from the picture, these are some of the harvests of our collections, of our selected accessions. More or less 10 kilos per plant. Okay. So then we did data harvesting and data gathering of the harvest tubers. So we characterized the tuber based on color, based on shape, and we even dry for anthocyanin analysis. Next, please. So this is the morphological characterization of the 30 OB accessions. So there is intermediate to high diversity of it is selected already, but still there is high diversity. Next, please. So this is the morphological characterization of the 30 accessions, the tuber shapes. So Tinampay is the queen of Philippine yam. This is the most popular variety of ube in Bohol. So this is aromatic in Bohol, but once you move out of Bohol, according to them, the aroma can be lost. Okay. So these are the shapes of our collection, of our selected accessions. Next, please. And these are the color of the selected accessions. So Kinampay, even though it is the queen of Philippine yam, is not that purple. So the color is a bit purple, but there is white shade. Unlike the other accessions, for example, in the case of Bilyas 1, so the color is quite high in anthocyanin. So Mabitak 1 also, Mabitak 2, Bae, and other collections. Next, please. So this is just the dendrogram after characterization of the germ of the 30 accessions. So still there is diversity. because diversity is quite important in breeding. So you must select accessions or parentals that are really diverse, not the one that are close together. Okay. Next, please. So after the yield trial, so we were able to get the yield from the of the selections. So we were able to get accessions that are high yielding, like Biliasis 1, Biliasis 2. The yield is 60.32 tons per hectare. And Kinampay, which is a check variety, so yielded only 20 tons per hectare. So there are lots of accessions that yield higher than our Kinampay. So Biliasis 1, San Felipe, Carigar Leyte, LA 63. Okay, LA 63 is Leyte accession or accession from Visayas State University. And also LA 153. Next, please. Then we did drying of the tubers for anthocyanin analysis. Okay, next, please. And we have we conducted also sensory evaluation of the 10 purple flesh genotypes. So from 30, we selected only 10 high yielding, high anthocyanin. Then we did sensory evaluation. So the sensory evaluation, so we have LA 63, San Felipe, Bae, Batangas, Mabitac, Del Gallego, Kinampay, Biliasis, and Tobacco. So still, Kinampay is best in terms of aroma. It is the most aromatic. But in terms of, for example, in appearance, so this one, Tobacco, in taste is texture, ano? Taste nga, no? So this taste, the green one, so these are the best one. Okay, then Biliasis one is not more or less it's the aroma is comparable to Kinampay, but still Kinampay is still the best in terms of aroma. But what I'm saying is Kinampay is not the best variety in terms of the sensory evaluation. Only in terms of aroma. But Mabitac is more or less consistent. So it's not the highest, but still the consistent in terms of aroma, appearance, aroma, taste, texture, and general acceptability. Next, please. Okay, so after the anthocyanin analysis, we were able to profile the purple flesh accessions. So we can see from this table that, for example, in the case of Kinampay, different anthocyanin profile as compared to other accessions. So it means that different accessions have different anthocyanin profile, and that can be the contributor of the color. So that's why the color is variable. Not some are too purple, some are light. So probably this is the type of anthocyanin, and these are the type of anthocyanin present in that accessions. So for example, in the case of Batangas, this one, Kinampay, only this one. So different anthocyanin. Next, please. And these are our eight promising Dioscorea alata accessions. So we have Biliasis 2, Biliasis 1, San Felipe, Carigar Leyte, LA 63, Mabitac 2, Batangas, and Kinampay. So this is selected in terms of yield, in terms of anthocyanin profile, and even in sensory evaluation. So as of now, we are propagating these selections. Okay, so from these promising accessions, we were able to do whole genome sequencing. So we want to genotype all our accessions. So what we did is do whole genome sequencing. Next, please. Okay, so this is the pipeline for the whole genome sequencing. So you are going to isolate the genomic DNA, then do DNA fragmentation, end repair and A-tailing, adapter ligation, site selection, PCR amplification, and purification. Then after that, actually, we just sent the DNA samples in Malaysia for the genome sequencing. And these are the bioinformatics analysis pipeline. So raw data, quality control, reference genome mapping, and so on. Next, please. So based on our data, or the results of the genome sequencing, so the whole genome sequencing of the 5 Philippine Dysuria alata accessions generated high quality genomic data with Q30 scores exceeding 93%, 94.6% mapping rate, and an average sequencing depth of 30 times, demonstrating reliability of the data set. And this is the first whole genome sequencing of the 5 Philippine Dysuria alata accessions like Kinampay, Tobacco, Biliasis, Magbitak-2, and San Felipe, and high quality reads mapped to the reference genome. So the reference genome is a Chinese accession or a Chinese YAM. Next, please. So this is just the result. So over 20 million high quality SNPs and indels were mined, and Biliasis, the most genetically divergent, around 4 million SNPs and 616,000 indels. So, and this massive variation explains its unique high yield potential. So imagine Biliasis 1 is the high yielding one. Okay, then in the case of Kinampay, Kinampay is the most genetically conserved, so it has lowest heterozygosity of 0.67. So next, please. And this is just the comparison between the molecular mirror of Kinampay or genomic fingerprint or footprint of Kinampay and Biliasis 1. So Kinampay is highly stable. Inbred makes it physically fragile, but it protects the elite flavor. So that is probably that is the reason why there is aroma, high in aroma of Kinampay, and Biliasis is not aromatic. Okay, then Biliasis 1 is highly divergent. Heterozygous genome gives it the adaptability to survive mutations and dominate the field yields. So it has higher yield than Kinampay. Imagine 20 tons in the case of Kinampay, and in the case of Biliasis, around 60 tons per hectare. Next, please. Next, please. So, okay. Next, please. So, this is just the mapping structural architecture and hotspot. So, Biliasis anomaly, Biliasis 1 carries the highest structural variation, indicating intense evolutionary adaptation, hybridization, and active changes in genome structure. So that is probably the reason. There is Biliasis quite heterozygous, unlike Kinampay, which is more or less stable. So, and in the case of breeding, so we want to use the genomic data in the production of planting of new hybrids. Next, please. Next, please. Okay, next, please na. So as of now, we're propagating the selected accessions by means of tissue culture because there is a demand in the planting material. Next, please. We are also propagating by means of single leaf nodal cuttings. So we have optimized the propagation by means of single leaf nodal cuttings already. Then we are also propagating, next please. We are also propagating in the field, so production of tubers in the field. Okay. Next please. So, okay, this one. So I have the cost and return analysis of production of ube per hectare. So in terms of labor, so you will have around 92,920 the cost for labor. Okay, next please. Then in terms of material, if you're going to buy the sets or the planting material, so more or less I put 100 pesos per kilogram because as of now in Bohol, according to the mayor of Batuan, so the cost of the cost of ube is already 200 pesos per kilo. Or sometimes it reach pa daw ng 250 per kilo. Ang masama, walang mabili. Okay. So, so around 200,000 yung inyong sets. Ano, kung bibili kayo ng 2,000 kilogram. And more or less your cost is 267,000. If you are going to produce 1 hectare of ube. Okay. Then next please. If you are going, letter C is the fixed cost. So if you are going to buy knapsack sprayer or even plastic drums, so around 9,500. Next, please. Okay. So in regular season, more or less, your 1 hectare will yield 30 tons per hectare. At least, if you are going to plant not high-yielding variety, just a common variety, so the population density is around 20,000 up to 27,000 per hectare. So if your variety is yielding only 1 kilo per hill, so more or less you will have 20 tons per hectare or 27 tons per hectare. Okay, this is just a rough estimate. Then if you are going to sell them at 60 pesos per kilogram, so more or less, your gross income is 1,800,000. Okay. Then, during the off-season, so more or less, you will get 20 tons per hectare. And if you're going to sell them at 20 pesos per kilogram, so more or less, 1,200,000, your gross income. Then, you're going to subtract your cost of production, which is around 368,000. Okay, your net income is more or less 1,432,000. Imagine that is 1 year. So it's still profitable. Di ba? Or 10 to 12 months, so still you have 100,000 income per month. Then off-season, around 832,000. Then what if the price is 200 pesos? So this is only 60 pesos. So much more you will get high profit, di ba? So next please. Actually, that's all. Thank you. So the one in the picture are my laborers or my staff, and the one in the center is Bilyas one. So around 10 to 12 kilos per hill. So that's it. Thank you very much. Hindi ko naman magamit.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Lalucin, for that insightful presentation. So your work clearly demonstrates how advances in genomics and plant breeding can unlock the full potential of Philippine ube, paving the way for varieties that are more productive, climate resilient, and beneficial to both farmers and consumers. We sincerely appreciate, sir, for your team's valuable contribution to strengthening the country's high-value crops sector. Once again, thank you, Dr. Lalucin. And with that, we now open the floor for questions, for your comments and insights. Please use the microphone located along the aisle and introduce yourself and your organization you are affiliated with. Okay, so any insights or questions from our audience? Okay, we have, sir.
Sisimulan po muna ng tatay bago po yung mga anak. Ano po? Isang makaaribang araw po sa ating lahat. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Sirka for inviting us for the end time. Ano po, hindi ko na po mabilang kung ilang beses po kami nandito. Kanina po naligaw pa po kami, yung po pala bukas pa po pala ako na andun sa isang hall. Ano po, na excited lang po para bukas. So while actually I don't have that question po pero I have so many insights po talaga para doon. By the way, I am Dr. Richard Manzano. I am the Director for the Internationalization and Linkages of Colegio San Juan de Letran, Calamba. Aside from that, I'm also the principal for the senior high school. So while Ma'am Sharon po, ang inyo pong kasamaan po, invited us for this session, I'm thinking what will be the connection of this to our students simply because we are not literally into agriculture. However, since I am the director and also the principal, I force my students. Ano po, some of my students are here. The ABM, ito po para po sa kalaman ng lahat, ang DepEd po ang ABM po ay last curriculum na po ito. So wala na po ito sa mga susunod na mga panahon. And they change it with business and entrepreneurship. So I asked some of my students for grade 12 ABM and some ay business entrepreneurship for grade 11. So together with me, ang mga teachers po and advisors of our students. So first po kay director po, kanina sabi ko, nung bata kami, nagtatanim kami. So parang may edad na din po ako, ano po, para po sa kalaman ninyo po. So dati po ang babae ay nagtatahi, ang mga lalaki po ay magtatanim. Yun po ang nadatnan ko nung panahon noon na hindi po pwedeng mamilit ang batang lalaki na magtahi o magluto. Talaga pong pagtatanim ang pupuntahan niyo po para po doon sa mga nakaka-relate. So sabi ko po doon sa akin chair, nakatabi ko, bakit kaya sa Letran, dahil napakadaming lupa naman noon, bakit hindi kaya pagtanimin ko lahat ng mga estudyante? Hindi pa po nila alam lahat, pagtatanimin ko sila pagbalik namin sa Letran. Kasi po I am so I'm surprised and amazed with the presentation. Not only the ubi po, but other crops din po na naandoon. Sabi ko nga po, since we are also addressing the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and also the ESG, the Environmental, Social, and Governance, why not we need to start it sa ating bahay? Ano po, para doon. So, isa po yun. Pangalawa po ay yung mga products po ninyo. Next term po, since ang DepEd po ay naka 3 term po, patapos na po kami ng first term. Sa second term po, our grade 12 students will be doing their entrepreneurship course. So with that po, para pong tugma din po itong nangyayari dito, that our session might be one of the things they will consider in doing their products for the next term. So sabi ko po, sakto ulit. Ano po? Pangatlo po ay yung mga products pong naandyan, niloloko nga po nila ako kasi paborito ko po ay munggo para po hindi ako makalakad. Ano po, pero yung pong naandyan, and surprisingly that our country, especially the leadership of director and the rest of the team, ay merong mga ganyan na din po pala na makapagsabayan. So I am challenging my students here, my learners here, and the rest of the who are here po na supportan po nga natin na baka nga po kakabili natin ng mga produkto abroad ay meron po tayong mapagmalaki din na gawa naman ng Pinoy. And last po para po sa ube, ano po, favorite ko po kasi yun dahil my late mother po ay favorite ang ube. Sabi ko, bakit nga ba hindi laging available ang ube? Tapos naglolokohan po kami kanina, pagpunta sa palengke at sasabihin namin yung mga variety ng ube, baka sampalin po kami nung tendera doon. But kidding aside, marami po pala talagang klase ng ube na hindi namin, ngayon ko lang po nalaman, puro picture nga po ako. Kasi sabi ko, puro parang scientific name po lahat ng sinabi niyo po sa akin habang po ako nakikinig. But at the end of the day, this session really helped our students, but not only me, but also our learners. And we really appreciate your insights po and discussion this afternoon. So once again po, maraming salamat po, Sir Ka, and the rest of the team.
Okay, maraming salamat po. We have one question here directed to Dr. Lalusin. Sir, regarding ube, you mentioned about the hype of ube internationally. With the growing domestic and international demand for ube, what are the opportunities and challenges for its commercialization in the Philippines and overseas markets? Hello.
Hello.
Okay. So one of the challenges is the lack of planting materials. As of now, only few. You can buy only few planting materials. And what is surprising is they are claiming it kinampay when in fact it is not kinampay. Because kinampay is demanding a higher price as compared to the ordinary ube. So that's the problem. And I have seen one post in the FB, they are claiming it kinampay when in fact it is white. The flesh is white. So there is, so that is the one of the problem. The problem because of the lack of planting material, there are many people making it just to sell. They are taking kinampay as kinampay. Okay, or claiming kinampay as kinampay when in fact it's not the variety. Okay, then as of now, I am included in the Department of Agriculture propagation of the planting material. So we have selected 5 varieties of ube. All of them are purple, and we have included the 2 selections from our project. So one is kinampay, because kinampay is the queen of Philippine yam. Then the other one is balinggohon, the variety in Bukidnon. Then we have BU2 or the Zambales ube. So BU2 is a variety of Visayas State University, and we have 2 selections, the Villasis one, and I think Carigara. So these are our selections. So we have included this for the propagation of the planting material, and this will be planted, I think the initial one is 300 hectares. So once the propagation is already okay, so we're going to propagate by means of tissue culture, by means of single leaf nodal cuttings, and the mini set, the production of mini set. So instead of propagating the tuber with 100 grams weight, so we are going to propagate probably a little bit lesser. So around 30 grams or 40 grams per set. So instead of propagating 100, so at least you can have three sets already. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for Director Manicad. Since we have many students here, how can the Philippines...
Pwede bang
Ay,
ano? Oo, ano lang ako.
Sige, sir.
Mag-add lang. For the ube, importante po that we have talagang ma-confirm natin yung source ng ating planting material. Though we have difficulty in acquiring planting material, isang issue dito is dapat genuine yung planting material natin. That's why interventions of the Department of Agriculture is to ensure availability of quality planting materials and true to type planting material. So dito po papasok yung genomics. You can see that we have invested doon sa pagpapadala pa lang ng mga sample natin sa ibang bansa para matest natin yung pagiging true to type niya. As well as dito sa atin sa Pilipinas, magkakaroon na rin po tayo ng testing center through project ng BPI, UPLB, and I think it will be funded by COICA. So hindi na tayo magpapadala ng sample sa ibang bansa. Dito na po natin. And as far as to in the issue of securing yung ating variety, which is the ube kinampay, para hindi manakaw sa atin ng ibang bansa. Nakabinbin po ang pagpaparegister, pagpapapatent sa ube kinampay through the geographic indication. So, ito po ang one way para maprotektahan po natin ang ating ang variety na talagang sariling atin. As for the sa concern ni Sir regarding dun sa relevance ng mga students in this discussion, so this is very relevant because one of the problem that the agri sector is facing is the aging population ng ating mga farmers.
So through this advocacy, palitan ng kaalaman, yung yung interest ng ating mga kabataan sa pagpa-farming somehow ay kakaroon sila ng interest, not on the production level but to the higher level of the value chain. So we can make agriculture sexier by means of showing them na may income, may kita sa agriculture, and through the use of course, yung mga makabagong teknolohiya, mga kabataan, mga pindot-pindot. Sa Japan, ang traktora naka-GPS siya, pwedeng mag-Facebook ang ang operator ng traktora while operating the tractor. So yung mga ganong innovation ay I think magiging mabenta sa ating mga kabataan, sa ating mga estudyante. And of course, the connect ng nutrition sa agriculture. In one of our platform, which is the Gulayan sa Bayan, we all know na maraming gulayan. Mayroong gulayan sa paaralan, mayroong gulayan sa barangay, sa community, gulayan sa kanal. Pero ang isang problema po natin ay ang availability ng seedlings. Isang puna po sa Department of Agriculture, mamimigay po tayo ng seedling ng binhi, ngunit hindi tumutubo. Maybe because of some other factors like of course yung sa pag-store ng mga pinabagay na binhi, but by that time itatanim na natin, yung germination rate niya ay hindi na ganoon kataas. That's why isa po sa mga solutions na naisip ng programa ay i-capacitate ang ating community to produce the seedling. So through capacity building, training ng ating tinuturuan po natin sila ng grafting. Pero don't get me wrong ha. Yung grafting na itinuturo po sa kanila ay yung grafting na hindi masama. Hindi po ito grafting na kapatid ng corrupting. Katunog lang po. So grafting po ito na yung pagdudugtong po ng rootstock na matibay sa ulanan, sa mga peste, and yung sayon na mataas ang yield. So we have the kamlong, kombinasyon ng kamatis at talong. So this technology ay napakatagal na. It's 1960s, 1970s. Pero nakakalungkot po dahil ngayon lang po dito sa Pilipinas naipauso. Kung hindi pa dahil sa ating mga kapartners from JICA, hindi natin mairo-roll out sa ating mga communities ang grafting technology. So we also have the ampatola, ampalaya, and patola. We also have the kalapino, kalabasa, and pipino. So, nagpapa-research pa po tayo. May research tayo sa bar ng iba pang kombinasyon ng pwede nating i-graft. So, yung kawayan po at saging po, pwede rin po, kawayan at saging. At narinig nyo na po yun? Banana Q po ang labas nun. Tama ba? Banana, pwedeng kawayan din at baboy o barbecue. Po, nakakatuwa po at ang mga grupo ng kababaihan, grupo ng mga kabataan na tinuturuan natin ng grafting ay nagkakaroon po talaga sila ng interest at nakakakita ng opportunity. Dahil this is a high value activity, ang grafting, at the small area. And in a span of just weeks, mamomonetize natin yung investment and yung pagod natin in producing grafted seedlings. Magkano grafted seedlings? Diba? As compared to produce natin as raw, as vegetable, ready to eat vegetable. So maraming nauhook sa seedling production. And the LGUs and they can also buy back yung produce na seedling ng ating mga communities para yun ang ipamahagi nila sa mga gustong magtanim. in the community and sa mga commercial level farming.
Okay,
So,
thank you very much,
sige
sir.
po.
Sir, you mentioned about yung mga plants that are being grafted. How can the students or those interested to plant these crops, where can they get these planting materials if ever they're interested? Sir?
Ayan po, sa programa ng DA na Gulayan sa Bayan, we can tap you sa nearest na Gulayan sa Bayan at your respective locality para maturuan po tayo with the grafting technology kasi ang mga beneficiaries natin ay kinapacitate na rin to do the grafting and pwede rin po tayong pumunta sa mga regional offices ng Agricultural Training Institute because partner po natin ang ATI in rolling out the capacity building training for this grafting technology.
Apo. I think same question then with the planting materials or ube accessions. Suited for their local conditions, where can they access or get support, sir?
Okay, so if you are from Bohol, there are lots of ube in Bohol, Kinampay, and other varieties also are available. So like Balingohon and BU2 also. Then if you are from Bukidnon, so more or less they are available also in different places. Here in UPLB, we're still propagating by means of tissue culture. The problem with tissue culture is that you cannot directly plant it. So after tissue culture, then you are going to pot out, but you cannot directly plant them in the field. So you have to grow them in the nursery. After 3 years, then that's the time you're going to plant them in the field. Because the tubers that will be produced are just quite small. Unlike in the case of single leaf cuttings, single leaf nodal cuttings, they will produce more or less just like a marble potato. If you are familiar with marble potato, so more or less like that. And that can be planted already after 1 year. So instead of 3 years in tissue culture, and the problem, and another one is you're not going to buy or you're not going to consume chemicals. Imagine in the tissue culture production, so it entails cost of chemicals and other hormones, unlike in single leaf nodal cuttings that you need only the planting material and your soil media. Then, as of now, we're propagating also by means of field propagation. So probably by February, they will be available already. The sets of selected accessions.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes.
Sir, I would also like to mention that dito sa ating grafting or sa Gulayan sa Bayan, kapartner po natin dito ang Institute of Plant Breeding, sila Doc Elmer Inicola, kasi sila po yung source natin ng open pollinated variety na mga vegetable seeds na hindi libre kundi binabayaran po ng regions. Tama po ba? Okay na po ba, Doc Elmer, yung issue natin on that? Ayan. Thank you.
Okay, maraming salamat po. Okay, from our audience.
Good afternoon to our distinguished speakers. Thank you so much for your presentation. So earlier po, si Director Manicad was discussing about the HBC framework, sustainability, profitability, and resiliency. So, Dr. Lalusin, in terms of resiliency of ube, was there a study in terms of how ube will fare in terms of extreme temperature? What is the most suitable weather conditions for ube? Or if there's a specific variety that would have a high yield if we plant it. And then also to Director Manicad, so you also mentioned that right now Pag-asa already released the advice on El Nino. Do you have like specific recommendations for our farmers, particularly rice and corn farmers who are already being affected by El Nino? Ano po kaya yung HBC crop that they can plant as an alternative to rice or corn? Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. So, ube can be planted anywhere in the Philippines, so it can thrive. So but there are varieties that are more high yielding in one place as compared to the other, because the GYE or the genotype by environment interaction is quite high already, also in ube. So, and what we're doing is before the registration of the variety, we're doing multi-location trial so that we can select the most stable variety. So if the variety is selected already, so then that's the time we can plant. And we can do also specific recommendation. For example, if that variety is suited only in Visayas, so probably we can register them as location specific or location specific variety, so suited only in Visayas or probably in Luzon or probably in Mindanao. So we can plant ube in different places in the Philippines.
Sir, ako na. Ayun. Regarding naman sa concern mo using with the use of data from Pag-asa and the interventions that kinakailangan nating maipwesto. So kanina po I showed you the maps. So the intention of the maps is to identify yung mga vulnerable and not that vulnerable areas in major high-value crops commodities. So, for example, sa rice. Labas muna tayo sa sa high-value crops. Sa rice, kung itong lugar na ito ay mas magiging vulnerable, so maybe some high-value crops ay mai-substitute natin in the production of rice at specific time na medyo kokonti ang ang rainwater. So the intention of the map ay may pagbangga yung availability ng tubig as well as yung yung need nung crop for water. So from there on we can decide or suggest kung anong crop ang pupwede na ipang alternate sa kanya. And one of our recommended crops ay of course mung bean. So itong mung bean na to ay nakaprograma na rin sa amin before pa nitong El Nino. El Nino yung pumutok ang El Nino dahil we are targeting for mung bean self-sufficiency. So do you know that ang mung bean natin ay ini-import natin? Munggo na lamang ini-import natin. So we are targeting by 2028 na maging sufficient tayo sa mung bean because it is one of the resilient crops. It improves the soil and malaki ang role nito in nutrition security. Oo. So another ay mga root crops. Root crops like ube ay mas resilient siya, mga kamote, resilient po siya, hindi siya nangailangan ng maraming tubig. So doon sa mapa kanina na pinakikita, decision tool siya. Kung ang isang crop na usually pinoproduce sa isang area ay magastos kung magpo-produce tayo, magi-intervene tayo. So we can resort to other crops na mas hindi nangangailangan ng tubig and concentrate on other areas that we can maximize yung production. So bali ganun yung strategy. Doon sa we can forgo yung mga areas na magastos or impossible to produce, then maximize yung doon sa mga areas na possible na makapag-produce. So, ganun yung mapping na gustong makita ni Secretary Kiko Chu Laurel para makapag-decide ng ayos in positioning yung ating mga intervention. Yun po.
We can accommodate only one question and okay, two questions. Those two who are raising their hand. Yeah, sige po.
Good afternoon po. I'm Janica Pleto from the Institute of Agroforestry, UPLB. So I am a researcher po. So my question is for Director Manicad, sir. So you have presented earlier that one of the DA flagship initiatives is the Project Safe. Ano po? So in our experience, one of the biggest challenges in promoting agroforestry is transforming the farmer's mindset, particularly in shifting from conventional farming towards or to more sustainable system like agroforestry. So I'm just wondering, how has Project Safe encouraged the farmers to adopt agroforestry, and what particular approaches implemented by the project have been most effective in terms of gaining farmer trust and participation? Thank you po.
Ayun po, very valid po yung observation, yung katanungan kasi ang agroforestry kalimitan diyan situated sa sa upland, and sa upland na diyan yung mga indigenous people natin na medyo mayroong challenge in transforming their mindset. So ang DA po is employing a whole of DA approach. Hindi ko mo may programa, ang High Value Crops Development Program, ay kami lang yung basta mag-hawak niyan. So we tap expertise of other DA units, like the unit that is handling the IPs. We have the 4K, meaning kabuhayan at kaunlaran para sa mga kababayang katutubo. So sila po ang may expertise when it comes to to handling social preparation ng ating mga IP communities. So in that way, maging ready sila to accept, tanggapin yung mga intervention or yung konsepto na na ini-offer natin in the communities. Because sa agroforestry, the IPs, sila yung may mga massive na na nakalupaan. Kasi dapat tenured land din po yung yung ating papasukin when it comes to agroforestry. So yun po. So that's one way, conducting social preparation through our 4K program. And another one, yung mga consultation at the community level. So, isang strategy namin, low-hanging, is to partner with other agencies outside DA. So, kanina po, pinakita po natin that we are partnering with NPC, National Power Corporation, for the watershed areas. And naging interested kami sa kanila dahil they already have the community. Yung community na binuo nila dati pa, and i-fill in lang namin yung gap na kinakailangan nila, particularly mga planting material, particularly yung connecting sa market, connecting sa processing. We can probably deploy mga processing facilities para may pupuntahan yung produkto. So, lang siya, is a matter of strategy ng partnership with the community, other government agencies, and including the private sector din. So, yun po yung basically framework ng HVC. Hindi natin yung resources natin, though maliit lang, the High Value Crops Development Program sa budget, composed of around less than 2% of the total budget ng Department of Agriculture. But ang number of commodities ng High Value Crops Development Program is around 60 plus commodities. So makikita natin ang kakulangan sa budget. So strategy natin is partnership. Ang sinasaad naman sa batas is modeling ang HVC. Back up tayo ng batas, which is the Republic Act 7900 or High Value Crops Development Act, na nagsasabi na modeling tayo. Mga building model farms, partnership, linkages. Yun po. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We have to accommodate one last question. Okay po.
Hello. Hello po, I'm Dan from, a representative po from DNR Ecosystems Research and Development Bureau. Yun. So, ang tanong ko lang po ay kay Director. So, kaano-ano niyo po si Sir Jiggy Manikad? Joke lang po. Hindi. Hindi po.
Apelyido po,
Apelyido.
tapos medyo kahawig daw.
Kahawig.
Medyo kahawig tsaka apelyido.
Okay po. I mean, in connection lang din po dun sa last question, ano po kaya yung mga challenges or hindrances na naghihinder po sa mga farmers in adapting yung mga innovations or practices? May it be economic, social po ba? Ganyan. Ilan po?
Una dyan, syempre, pag may bago, sila, medyo hindi tanggap. So, kailangan talaga mag-model ka muna. Dahil ang farmer, once na mabigo sila, sasarado na sila. Sasarado na sila ng isip. Once na mag-fail, lalo pa, limbawa, papangakuan mo si farmer na kukunin yung produkto and hindi natuloy yung pagwa kahit nakakontrata, maano na sila, madadala, madidisappoint na sila. So that's why ang engagement namin with the farmers ay talagang nakikita natin na may sample talaga, may proof of concept para ma-encourage mo sila na makipag partnership sa atin. For example, sa Gulayan sa Bayan. Gulayan sa Bayan, na-identify namin ang women's group na maging partner, maging una sa priority natin dahil kinakailangan nila ng dagdag kita. Imbis na magmaritesan sa community, ay magamit din nila yung oras nila in agricultural production, particularly sa seedling production. So isa sa mga strategy na ginawa natin ay makipag-partner with the National Rural Improvement Club. Inausap natin ang presidente ng Rural Improvement Clubs. Kasi they are being overseen by the Agricultural Training Institute. So na-establish yung connection. And naging maayos naman yung pag-uusap, and kinakailangan din na may magbaback up na someone na medyo influential in the community, for example yung mga LGUs. So rural improvement clubs ay in partnership din, or minsan ang may hawak sa kanya ay mga asawa ni mayor. So may kakaroon din ng parang somehow influence mga influential na tao sa LGU para mai-promote and matanggap yung programa. Especially kung may backup ng ating local government. So bottom line is partnership. So hindi magagawa ng DA yung kanyang proyekto without the strong partnership at the ground level. Dahil ang Department of Agriculture or agriculture is a devolved function of the government. So implementer talaga ay ground level.
Okay, this is really the last question.
Hello
Yes,
po.
sir.
Good afternoon. Maraming salamat po sa opportunity, but I really have to take this opportunity. Sir, I'm Miguel de los Santos, representing local government unit as agri-development consultant of a province, municipality. I recently invited Sir Anton Lalucin to conduct a training seminar for our farmers in Binalonan, Pangasinan to conduct this high-value crops training to diversify our farmers' income. So I just wanted to represent the LGU. So in an LGU, we have the Municipal Agriculture Office. And the Municipal Agriculture Office has a very loaded work by distributing fertilizer, distributing subsidies. So it's really hard for them to really monitor yung mga, if there are experiments that being conducted or coming from the high value crops development program or other Department of Agriculture sector. So the thing is, what our municipal mayor does or did is to hire an agri-development program consultant, which is me, basically. So what I do, kasi if you follow the government processes, it will take a lot of time. So since they hired somebody as a consultant, ako na yung gumagawa ng ibang work. And that's a good observation as well. If an LGU is really aggressive with the agriculture program, they can hasten the processes for projects. So what we do in Pangasinan, in Binalonan, Pangasinan, is I create programs that are connected to high-value crops. We do trials. Tapos, most especially if there's a new industry that we think are potentially will give a very, very good industry to our community. So we nagdadala kami ng mga expert katulad si Sir Anton in Pangasinan in a very quick time. Hindi pa nga namin bayad si Sir Anton. That was 2 weeks ago. Because that's the process of the LGU. So what I'm trying to say is that I think there's a need to have that kind of initiative from the local government unit to add an additional arm to work on this partnership. Recently, I had a project, an agri-solar, with the help of Citicorp. It's a big solar company. It's 170 hectares in Binalonan, Pangasinan. So I talked to them as a consultant. We tried to manifest a project. So I talked to PhilFida for a partnership with regards to the industry. So they have 170 hectares available land, and we are already doing tripartite MOA. So it's like that. In LGU, if you have wala kayong ganyang arm to work on it, you're just gonna be sticking on the same processes every year. You do distribution of fertilizer, collection of data of farmers. Kung may bagyo, you just collect all the data about it. And it's gonna be a long, long way. Natapos na yung term ng mga mayor, governor, and walang mangyayari. So I think it's a good potential pwede natin i-consider din. I mean, through you, of course, to have an extension, like a real extension worker, most especially that are very, expert to agricultural economics. Kasi yung economics part is something that you have to look forward to also. Kasi that's the everything that you do should be market driven, 'di ba? And yun yung nagkukulang, I think. So anyway, so I would like to take opportunity. I wanted to present po our projects in your office. So I just wanna get your details later, sir. Ayun po. Maraming salamat po.
Hello. Ayun, thank you, sir. Actually, that is our strategy, is to partner at the local government unit. Kasi LGU yung nakakaalam kung ano talaga yung kinakailangan. And I forgot to mention that we are projectized. Hindi po tayo, ang approach natin is projectized approach, programmatic approach. So, hindi po yung only pamimigay ng seeds. That's why Gulaya sa Bayan Hindi po natin sila binibigyan ng anli isda, kundi tinuturuan po natin sila na mangisda, maging sustainable. So ito po yung strategy ng programa. And actually, pwede tayong magpa-schedule for a meeting sa opisina. Ito po yung laging ginagawa, may consultation po tayo with the LGU. Marami pong talagang pupunta sa LGU to present their kung anong proposal nila and to identify kung ano yung posible na project natin. Pero dapat partnership. Meron tayo dapat tangan pagpunta natin sa opisina. May tangan tayo na kung ano yung may pa-partner natin with little resources ng ating Department of Agriculture. Ayun po. Thank you.
Okay, so that wraps up our open forum. Let us all give Director Manicad and Dr. Lalusin a big round of applause. Okay, so for the awarding of the Certificate of Appreciation and Token of Gratitude to our esteemed guest speakers, I kindly invite Dr. Rico Angcog, CIRCA Deputy Director for Administration, and also Dr. Nova Ramos, Head of the Training for Development Unit under the Education and Collective Learning Department of CIRCA. Allow me to read the citation on the certificate. The Southeast Asian Regional Center for Graduate Study and Research in Agriculture awards the Certificate of Appreciation to Director Joseph C. Manicad, sir, for sharing his expertise as speaker during the Agriculture and Development Seminar Series titled Resilient and Profitable Crops Under Climate Change, What Works for Smallholder Farmers, held on 28 July 2026 at CIRCA UPLB Campus College, Los Baños, Laguna, Philippines. Signed by Dr. Mercedita A. Sombilia, CIRCA Center Director. Okay, thank you very much, sir. With the same citation, a certificate of appreciation is also awarded to Dr. Antonio G. Lalusin for sharing his expertise as speaker for this afternoon's event. The certificate is also signed by Dr. Mercedita A. Sombilia, CIRCA Center Director. Okay po. Okay, so may we ask our participants to scan the QR code flashed or again for our feedback form. We would like to hear your insights, what you have learned, and also to give us feedback on this afternoon's event. You can take a photo of this one so that you can do it later. The form is open until midnight today. So please don't forget to fill out the feedback form. Okay, so at this time, we would like to invite everyone for a group photo with our resource speakers. We would like to invite our two speakers, Dr. Angcog and Dr. Nova, to stand in front, and everyone will be standing. And those at the back, you may take the aisle, stand at the aisle, compress at the center, and we'll have a group photo.
Sila no, malayo. Ay, wag na sa likod. Bawal. Oh my God. Sige ma'am, di na lang pakita. Sa likod natin po. Asa na po?
Okay, once again, we would like to thank Director Manicad and Dr. Lalusin for sharing with us an insightful and timely presentation about resilient and profitable crops under climate change, what works for smallholder farmers. To our attendees and guests, thank you very much for your participation. Please enjoy the light refreshments that we have prepared for you at the lobby. So good day, everyone.
Come, let's build the center that we'd like to be. A place where you and me can work in harmony. Where everyone is proud to serve with dignity. Come, let's make this dream a reality. Fill our hearts and minds with a vision. Let our words below our mission. Leave our values on excellence in work, commitment and unity. Come share this dream for the senior region, extend it to the world throughout generation. Fill our hearts and minds with our vision. Side by side we stand for our mission. Leave our values on excellence in work, commitment and unity. Let's show the world we can. With God close at hand, we will grow together for the better.